Chapter 1. My daughter married an old man. The day my daughter told me she was going to marry a man older than me, the evening sky had turned the color of rust. I remember that detail because I stood by the kitchen window, longer than usual, staring at the dying sunlight, bleeding into the horizon, as if the world itself had been wounded. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that comes before something breaks. Aba, I need to talk to you. Her voice trembled, but there was a firmness beneath it. A firmness I did not recognize. She stood in the doorway, her fingers twisting the edge of her dupatta. My little girl. The same girl who once ran through this house barefoot, who used to hide behind my legs when strangers came. The same girl who refused to sleep unless I told her stories about princesses and brave knights. I turned to face her slowly. What is it? Aisha? I asked. She didn't meet my eyes at first. She looked down at the floor, as if the tiles could somehow shield her from what she was about to say. I've decided to get married. For a moment, my heart lifted. Marriage. Of course. She was 22 now. It was natural. I had imagined this day many times. I had imagined standing beside her, holding her hand as I gave her away to someone worthy. Someone young. Someone kind. Someone who would grow old with her. That's good, I said carefully. Who is he? Her silence stretched like a crack in glass. His name is Cameron. The name meant nothing to me. Does he work with you? I asked. She nodded. He owns the company. I felt something shift inside my chest. Owns? Wes. How old is he? The question came out sharper than I intended. She swallowed. 58. The number did not make sense at first. It floated in the air between us, unreal. I blinked, certain I had misheard. What? He's 58. Aba. My knees felt weak. I reached for the back of the chair beside me. 58. I repeated. My voice sounded distant, as if someone else were speaking through me. She nodded again, tears forming in her eyes. He's a good man. A good man. I laughed, but it was not a sound of humor. It was hollow, brittle. He is older than me, I said quietly. I know. You're 22. I know. And you think this is normal? My voice rose despite my effort to keep it steady. You think this is what I raised you for? Her eyes finally met mine, and I saw something in them that frightened me, more than the age of the man she had chosen. Resolve. I love him, she whispered. Love. The word felt like a knife twisting slowly inside me. You don't know what love is, I said. You're a child. I'm not a child anymore, she cried, her voice breaking. I make my own decisions now. The house echoed with her words. I had spent my entire life protecting her from pain, from harsh winds, from people who might take advantage of her softness. And now, she stood before me, ready to walk into a storm with a man who had already lived half his life. Does he have children? I asked, my voice low. Yes. How old? One is 30. The other is 27. My breath caught. They're older than you. I know. She repeated, her shoulders shaking. Then what are you thinking? I demanded. Do you understand what this means? When he is 70, you will be barely in your 30s. When he is weak, you will still be young. When he dies, I stopped. The word hung there, heavy and cruel. She covered her mouth as a sob escaped her. Don't say that. It's the truth, I shouted. The truth I did not want to imagine. The truth that pictured my daughter as a widow before she even reached middle age. The truth that saw her youth slipping away in hospital corridors and medicine bottles. I'm tired of you treating me like I don't understand anything, she said, wiping her tears. He respects me. He listens to me. He makes me feel safe. Safe. The irony nearly crushed me. I have made you safe your entire life, I said softly. I know, she whispered, but this is my life. Abba. I looked at her face, so young, so fragile, and I remembered the night she was born. I remembered holding her tiny body in my hands, promising silently that no harm would ever touch her. And now Harm was standing at the door, wearing a suit and a polite smile. Have you told him about me? I asked. Wes. And what did he say? He wants to meet you. I felt anger surge through me. He wants my blessing. Wes. My hands trembled. He will not get it. She stepped back as if I had struck her. You won't even meet him. I will not sit across from a man my age who wants to marry my daughter. Her tears fell freely now. You don't even know him. I don't need to. Silence filled the room again, but this time it was thick and suffocating. She walked toward me slowly. Aba, I don't want to lose you. You won't lose me, I said, though I wasn't sure if it was true. If you don't accept this, you will. The words pierced deeper than anything else she had said. Was this what it had come to? A choice between my daughter's happiness and my own peace of mind. I turned away from her because I could not let her see the tears forming in my eyes. Give me time, I said finally. How much time? I don't know. She nodded weakly. Before leaving the room, she said, something that would echo inside me for nights to come. He doesn't treat me like a child. After she left, I sank into the chair. The house no longer felt like home. It felt like a place where memories were slowly dissolving. I imagined her wedding day. Not the one I had dreamed of, but this new version. I imagined standing beside a man with gray hair and wrinkled hands, calling him my son-in-law. I imagined people whispering. I imagined the pity in their eyes. But worse than that, I imagined her regret. What if one day she looked back and realized she had given her youth to someone who was already nearing the end of his? What if she woke up one morning beside him and felt trapped? And what if she blamed me for allowing it? The sky outside had turned dark. The rust colored light was gone. I whispered her name into the silence. Aisha. For the first time since she was born, I felt powerless. And somewhere, in another part of the city, a 58-year-old man was preparing to take my daughter away from me. For the first time since she was born, I felt powerless. And somewhere, in another part of the city, a 58-year-old man was preparing to take my daughter away from me. That night, sleep did not come. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling fan as it rotated slowly, its shadow slicing the room into fragments. Every creak of the house sounded louder than usual. Every passing car felt like an intrusion. I kept seeing her as a child, her tiny fingers gripping mine as we crossed the road. Her laughter when I pushed her on the swing at the park. The way she would run to me after school, her braids bouncing. Her face glowing with stories she couldn't wait to tell. When did she stop needing my hand? When did someone else become her safety? Around midnight, I heard her door open. Soft footsteps moved down the hallway. I closed my eyes, pretending to be asleep. She paused outside my room. I could feel her presence even without seeing her. "Abba," she whispered. I didn't answer. After a few seconds, her footsteps retreated. I pressed my palm over my chest to steady the H there. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I told myself I needed time to think, but in truth, I was afraid. Afraid that if I left the house, she would leave too. Afraid that when I returned, she would be gone with her suitcase, chasing a future I could not stop. Around noon, she came into the living room where I sat staring at nothing. "He wants to come this evening," she said quietly. My jaw tightened. "He doesn't waste time." She didn't respond to the sarcasm. "Please," she added softly. "Just meet him once." I studied her face. There were dark circles beneath her eyes. She hadn't slept either. For a moment, I wondered if love was always this painful. If perhaps I had forgotten how it felt to stand against the world for someone. "Fine," I said at last. "Let him come." Relief washed over her features, but it was mixed with fear. "Thank you." As she turned away, I said, "But don't mistake this for approval." She nodded without looking back. The entire afternoon felt heavy. I noticed details I had never paid attention to before. The cracks in the wall, the faded paint near the staircase, the worn-out sofa. Would he notice them too? Would he sit here, judging silently, thinking he was rescuing my daughter from a small life? By the time the doorbell rang, my heart was pounding. Aisha hurried to open it. I remained seated. I heard his voice before I saw him. Deep, calm, controlled. "Assalamu alaikum." His tone was respectful, almost gentle. "Wa alaikum, assalam," I replied stiffly. When he stepped into the room, I forced myself to look at him. He was well dressed. Gray hair neatly combed. Lines on his face that spoke of age. Yes, but also experience. His eyes were sharp yet strangely soft. This was not the villain I had imagined. He greeted me formally and extended his hand. I hesitated for a fraction of a second before shaking it. His grip was firm, but not overpowering. "Thank you for meeting me," he said. I gestured for him to sit. Aisha remained standing for a moment, unsure, then quietly sat beside him, but not too close. The space between them bothered me less than I expected. "So," I began, keeping my voice measured, "you wish to marry my daughter?" "Yes," he replied simply. "You are aware of her age?" "Less. And yours?" A faint smile touched his lips. "Very aware." I did not smile back. "Why?" I asked bluntly. "Why would a man your age want a girl her age?" Aisha flinched at the word girl, but I ignored it. He did not seem offended. "I did not plan it," he said calmly. "Feelings are not scheduled." "Feelings?" I repeated, bitterness creeping into my tone. "You have already lived your youth." "She has not." He looked at Aisha for a moment before answering. "I don't want to take her youth from her," he said quietly. "I want to protect it." The audacity of that statement made my blood boil. "She does not need your protection," I snapped. "She has mine." "I know," he said, meeting my eyes steadily. "And I respect that." The room grew tense. "Do your children know?" I asked. "Yes." "And what do they think?" "They were surprised," he admitted. "But they trust me." A trust. The word felt fragile. "And what about when you are old and ill?" I pressed. "When she is still young." "Will she spend her best years caring for you?" Aisha's hands tightened in her lap. He did not look away. "If I become ill, I will ensure she is never burdened," he said. "I have made arrangements." "Arrangements?" I echoed. "My finances are stable. She will never struggle." I felt insulted. "You think this is about money?" "No," he said firmly. "I think this is about fear." The room fell silent. He continued, his voice softer now. "You are afraid she will suffer. You are afraid she will regret this. You are afraid of losing her." Each sentence felt like he was reading directly from my heart. "And you're not afraid?" I challenged. He paused. "I am terrified," he admitted. That answer unsettled me more than arrogance would have. "Then why do this?" I demanded. He looked at Aisha again, and something in his expression shifted. Something vulnerable. "Because when she walks into a room, it feels less empty," he said quietly. "Because she speaks and I listen. Because I did not know I could feel this alive again." Alive again. I studied his face. This was not lust. Not greed. Not manipulation. This was something else. Something complicated. Still, I could not accept it. "You understand," I said slowly, "that if you hurt her, I will never forgive you." "I would not forgive myself," he replied. Aisha's eyes filled with tears. "I don't want you two to fight," she whispered. "We're not fighting," I said, though it felt like war inside me. The conversation stretched on. Questions, answers, silences. When he finally stood to leave, He turned to me once more. "I will wait for your decision," he said. After he left, the house felt different. Aisha stood in the doorway, watching me. "Well?" she asked, her voice fragile. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Because for the first time, I was no longer sure whether I was protecting her or simply afraid of being replaced. The thought clung to me long after she had gone to her room. That night, I sat alone in the living room, the lights turned off, the city's faint glow slipping through the curtains. I replayed every word Kamran had spoken, every pause, every look he gave my daughter. He had not touched her unnecessarily. He had not spoken over her. He had not tried to charm me with false humility. He had simply sat there, calm, composed, painfully sincere. And that sincerity disturbed me more than anything else. If he had been arrogant, I could have hated him. If he had been dismissive, I could have forbidden the marriage. If he had shown even the smallest sign of selfishness, I would have thrown him out without hesitation. But he hadn't. He had looked at me like a man who understood what it meant to love a daughter. And that was unbearable. The next few days passed in strained silence. Aisha moved around the house carefully, as if afraid to disturb something fragile. She still made my tea in the morning, still asked if I needed anything from the market. But there was a distance now, a quiet awareness that everything could change. On the fourth day, she came to me again. "He asked if you've decided," she said gently. I looked at her for a long moment. "Have you?" I asked instead. Her eyes didn't waver. "Yes? You're certain?" "Wes, even if I say no." Her lips trembled. "I don't want to choose between you." "But you will," I said softly. "If I refuse, what will you do?" Silence. Her silence was my answer. I felt something inside me collapse. "When is the wedding?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Her breath caught. "Next month." "So soon." "We don't want to delay." Of course they didn't. Love never wants to wait. I nodded slowly. "Then we will do it properly." Her eyes widened. "You mean?" "I mean," I said, forcing the words out through a throat thick with grief. "You are my daughter. If you are to be married, you will be married with dignity." She broke down then, falling to her knees beside me, clutching my hands like she used to when she was small. "Thank you, Aba," she sobbed. "Thank you." I placed my hand on her head, and for the first time since this began, I allowed myself to cry openly. The wedding preparations began quietly. Relatives whispered when they heard the news. Some tried to hide their shock, others didn't bother. "He's how old? Is this true? What is her father thinking?" I heard everything. Every question felt like a blade. But I stood tall. If this was her choice, I would not let the world shame her for it. Kamran visited often during those weeks. Always respectful. Always measured. Sometimes he brought sweets. Sometimes he brought nothing but himself. I watched him carefully. I noticed how he listened when she spoke, how he never interrupted, how his eyes softened when she laughed. And I noticed something else. He never tried to isolate her from me. In fact, he encouraged her to spend time with me. "Go sit with your father," I once overheard him say. He won't always say what he feels, but he feels deeply. The words lingered with me long after. One evening, as we sat together in the courtyard, I finally asked him something I had been holding back. "Do you love her?" I said. "Or do you love how she makes you feel?" He didn't answer immediately. "I love her courage," he said at last. "I love her kindness. I love the way she sees the world as if it can still be fixed." He looked down at his hands. "And I love how she forgives my age." That sentence carried a weight I hadn't expected. "You think she will regret it?" I asked quietly. "I think," he replied, "that regret belongs to people who live without choice. She is choosing this." His honesty was disarming. The wedding day arrived faster than I was ready for. The house was filled with voices, with fabrics, with the scent of perfume and flowers. Aisha sat in her bridal dress, her face glowing beneath the soft lights. She looked beautiful, but she also looked impossibly young. When I entered her room, everyone else quietly stepped out. For a moment, it was just us. She looked at me through tear-filled eyes. "Abba," I sat beside her. "Are you happy?" I asked. "Yes," she whispered. "Are you afraid?" She nodded slightly. "A little. That's normal." She took my hand. "Will you be okay?" I forced a smile. Fathers survive these things. But inside, I was breaking. When it was time, I walked her to the stage. Kamran stood waiting. In his formal attire, with his gray hair and steady posture, he looked dignified. Not foolish. Not predatory. Just older. People stared. I felt their judgment pressing against my back. But I kept walking. When I placed her hand into his, my fingers trembled. He noticed. And he whispered something so softly that only I could hear. "I will not let her feel alone." I searched his face for doubt. I found none. The ceremony ended in applause and muted whispers. As she left with him that night, sitting beside him in the decorated car, she looked back at me through the window. Her eyes were filled with tears. So were mine. The car drove away slowly. I stood there long after it disappeared from view. The house was silent when I returned inside. Her room was empty. Her laughter was gone. Her absence echoed in every corner. I walked into her room and sat on her bed, staring at the wall where childhood drawings still faintly marked the paint. For years, I had prepared myself to let her go. But nothing prepares a father for the moment his daughter chooses another man's home over his. And yet, as I sat there in the dim light, I realized something that frightened me even more than her marriage. I missed her already. Not as a child. Not as someone who needed me. But as someone who had grown beyond my protection. And for the first time, I understood that love is not about holding on. It is about letting go. Even when it feels like you are losing everything. It is about letting go. Even when it feels like you are losing everything. The first morning without her felt unnatural. I woke up before dawn, instinctively listening for the soft sound of her footsteps in the kitchen. She used to wake early on weekends, humming quietly as she prepared tea for both of us. The kettle would whistle, and she would call out, "Aba, less sugar today, okay?" That morning, there was only silence. The house had never seemed this large. I sat at the dining table alone, staring at the empty chair across from me. Her cup was still in the cabinet, slightly chipped at the rim, because she once dropped it, while laughing too hard at something I had said. I almost reached for it out of habit. Instead, I made tea for one. The days that followed stretched endlessly. Relatives stopped visiting. The whispers faded. Life returned to its ordinary rhythm. But my world had shifted permanently. She called every evening. "How are you?" "Abba, I'm fine. Did you eat?" "Wes. Are you taking your medicine?" "Wes." Our conversations were polite, careful, as if we were both afraid to step into something too emotional. "Are you happy?" I asked her once. There was a pause. "Yes," she said. "He's kind to me." A kind. The word gave me a fragile comfort. Weeks turned into months. I saw them together occasionally at family gatherings. She wore subtle elegance now. No longer the bright colors she used to prefer. Her laughter had softened. There was a maturity in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Kamran treated her gently in public. He never raised his voice. He never ignored her presence. But I watched closely. A father never stops watching. One evening, she visited alone. She walked into the house slowly, looking around as if searching for something she had left behind. "I missed this place," she said. I wanted to ask if she missed me, but I didn't. We sat together in the living room. She looked thinner. "Are you eating properly?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Yes." "You look tired." "It's just work." There was something in her tone that unsettled me. "Is he treating you well?" I asked carefully. Her eyes flickered for a second too long. "Yes," she replied quickly. Too quickly. I leaned forward. "Aisha." She looked down at her hands. "He has health issues," she admitted quietly. My chest tightened. "What kind?" "His heart," she whispered. He didn't tell me how serious it was before. The room felt smaller. "What do the doctors say?" "They're monitoring it." Monitoring. My voice rose despite myself. "He's nearly 60. "I know," she said softly. But he didn't want me to worry. I felt anger rising. Not at her, but at him. "He should have told you everything." "He was afraid I would leave," she said. That sentence struck me deeply. "And would you have?" I asked. She hesitated. "I don't know." Silence settled between us again. "I chose this, Aba," she said, as if reminding both of us. I can't run now. I looked at her. The slight dark circles beneath her eyes, the way her shoulders seemed heavier. You are still young, I said gently. You don't have to carry everything alone. She finally looked at me, and for a moment, I saw the little girl again. I'm scared, she whispered. That was the first honest crack. I moved closer and placed my hand over hers. It's okay to be scared. A tear slid down her cheeks. I thought loving someone older meant stability, she said. I didn't think about hospitals, about medicines, about losing him. The word hung there again, just as it had months ago. You knew this was possible, I said quietly. I knew it in my mind, she replied. But I didn't feel it in my heart. Her vulnerability tore at me. Does he know you're afraid? I asked. She shook her head. I don't want him to feel guilty. You are his wife, I said firmly. Not his nurse. As she gave a weak smile. That night, when she left, I felt the weight of her fear settle inside my own chest. A week later, I received a call. It was Kamran. His voice sounded weaker than before. Can you come to the hospital? He asked. My heart stopped. When I arrived, Aisha was sitting outside the emergency room, her face pale. He collapsed. She whispered. I sat beside her. For hours, we waited. The sterile smell of the hospital corridors brought back memories I didn't want. My own wife's final days, machines beeping, doctors speaking in careful tones. I looked at my daughter, sitting there in her early 20s, her hands trembling as she clutched prayer beads. This was not how her marriage was supposed to begin. When the doctor finally came out, his expression was serious. It was a mild heart attack, he said. He's stable for now, but he needs strict care. But Aisha closed her eyes in relief. I did not, because, for now, is never a comforting phrase. That night, I watched her sit beside his hospital bed. She adjusted his blanket. She held his hand. She whispered reassurances. He looked fragile, older than before. As I stood in the doorway, he saw me. There was no pride in his eyes now. No calm composure. Only vulnerability. I'm sorry, he murmured. I didn't know if he was apologizing for collapsing, or for marrying her at all. I stepped closer. Get better, I said quietly. He nodded weakly. For the first time, I did not see him as the man who had taken my daughter away. I saw him as a man afraid of leaving her too soon. And that realization hurt more than anger ever could. Because now, the fear was no longer about losing her to him. It was about her losing him. It was about her losing him. The hospital became a second home for her. Days blended into nights under harsh white lights. The rhythmic beeping of machines replaced the sound of laughter that once filled her world. I visited every evening. Sometimes bringing food she barely touched, sometimes just sitting beside her in silence. Kamran grew thinner with each passing week. His hair, once neatly combed and dignified, seemed softer now, almost fragile. The strength in his voice had faded. But whenever Isha walked into the room, something in his eyes still brightened. One night, as I stood by the window of his hospital room, he spoke quietly. I didn't think it would happen this soon. I didn't respond immediately. You knew, I said after a moment. You knew your heart wasn't strong. He closed his eyes. I hoped it would give me more time. For what? I asked. To grow old with her. The cruelty of that sentence nearly broke me. You were already old, I said, but there was no anger left in my voice. Only exhaustion. A faint smile touched his lips. Not when she looked at me. I turned away because I could not bear the sincerity of it. Later that night, Aisha stepped outside the room to get some air. I followed her into the quiet corridor. She leaned against the wall, her face pale. I can't lose him, she whispered. I placed my hands on her shoulders. You can survive anything, I said. I don't want to survive, she replied. I want him to live. Her words were not dramatic. They were raw, honest. For months, she had carried herself with quiet strength. But now the fear had consumed her. The doctors tried everything. Medication, procedures, monitoring. But some battles are already decided long before they begin. On a cold morning, just as the sky was beginning to lighten, his heart gave up. It was sudden. Aisha was holding his hand when the machines began to scream. She kept saying his name. Kamran? Kamran? As if calling him back from somewhere he had already gone. I stood frozen at the doorway, watching my daughter's world collapse in seconds. When the doctors finally covered him with a white sheet, she didn't cry immediately. She just stared, as if waiting for him to move again. As if love could reverse death. It was only when they asked her to step aside that the sound came. A broken, animal, like sob that tore through the hospital corridor. I held her as she collapsed into my arms. And in that moment, she was not a wife. She was my little girl again. The funeral was quiet. People spoke in soft voices about fate and destiny. About how at least he had known love in his final years. About how brave she had been. Brave. I hated that word. Bravery is something the world gives you when it doesn't know what else to offer. After everyone left, the house she had shared with him felt unbearably empty. His clothes still hung in the wardrobe. His glasses rested on the bedside table. The scent of his cologne lingered faintly in the air. She walked through each room slowly, touching objects as if they might still be warm. I thought we had more time, she said quietly. I had no answer. Days later, she returned to my house. Not as a bride this time. Not with decorated hands and hopeful eyes. She came with a single suitcase. Her steps were slow as she entered. I didn't ask questions. I simply opened my arms. She fell into them without hesitation. The room that had once felt too large now felt complete again. But at a cost I would never have chosen for her. At night, I sometimes heard her crying softly in her old bedroom. Grief is a strange thing. It doesn't move in straight lines. Some mornings, she would wake early and cook breakfast, like she used to, determined and composed. Other days, she wouldn't leave her bed. One evening, months after his passing, she sat beside me in the courtyard. The sky was the same rust-colored shade it had been the day she first told me about him. "Aiba," she said gently. "Yes." "Do you regret letting me marry him?" The question was careful, fragile. I looked at her face. There were new lines there now, not from age, but from sorrow. But there was also something else. Depth. "No," I said honestly. She searched my expression. "I was afraid," I continued. "Afraid you would waste your youth. Afraid you would be lonely. Afraid you would blame me." "I don't blame you," she whispered. "I know." She looked up at the sky. "I loved him," she said. "Even knowing it might end like this." I nodded. "That's what makes it real." She turned to me, her eyes glistening. "I don't regret loving him," she said. "I just wish I could have loved him longer." Her words carried no bitterness, only longing. I reached for her hand. "You gave him happiness in his final years," I said. "And he gave you something too." And she tilted her head slightly. "What?" I thought carefully before answering. "He showed you that love is not measured in years," I said. "It is measured in depth." A tear slipped down her cheek. "Will it always hurt like this?" she asked. "No," I replied softly. "But it will always matter." The evening breeze moved gently through the courtyard. For a long time, we sat in silence. She had married an old man. The world had judged. I had feared the worst. And perhaps the worst had come. But as I looked at my daughter, stronger now, wiser, carrying both love and loss within her, I realized something I hadn't understood before. We cannot protect the people we love from pain. We can only stand beside them when it arrives. She rested her head on my shoulder, just like she used to, when she was a child afraid of thunder. And as the sky darkened above us, I whispered a quiet prayer. Not for a different past, but for her future. Because even after heartbreak, life continues. And so does love.